Alright, in this video I'm going to show or demonstrate how to make a 3-strand rope splice, easy splice. This is one I've done many years ago. I kind of had to review on how to do this. This is a recent one I made, and then here's one that we're going to make here. And this is working with compromised cordage but using a 3-strand ply. And I have yet to work on rope making a 3-strand ply. There seems to be a different technique to that I have yet to study, but it seems very interesting if you have enough cordage. But for now, if you happen to have rope lying around and you have, like I said, if you have 25 feet on one end and 25 feet on another end, you need 50 feet of rope, then you can splice together those two pieces and have an effectively decent 50-foot piece of rope. That should be, the integrity should be pretty good. There is some math to this as far as how long. If it's 50 feet, you don't want to splice like that. You want at least maybe a foot, of splicing, just so it makes sure it sticks really well. Anyways, I'll demonstrate how I do this. You will need some sort of tool like a pen or a chopstick or something like that. Duct tape definitely works, definitely helps, or electrical tape, masking tape will work too. And being able to know how to do either common whipping or strangle knot. And all those links will be below. Alright, so in this video, we're still working on compromised cordage, and in the last video that I made, I'll post that below in case you missed it. I worked on synthetic 550 cord, or quote-unquote parachute cord, which is not 550 cord, but that's a whole nother, I digress. And then using either natural or synthetic fibers, how to either shorten or still work with cordage that is compromised using a sheep shank and or fisherman's knot or double fisherman's knot. Now we're going to learn a little bit of splicing with cordage using 3-strand rope. And I think this is teasel. I'm not sure. I can't remember when I got this, and I don't have the packaging anymore, but I think it's teasel cordage. It's a natural cordage, and as you can tell, it has what's called memory or follow. It's got memory. So, if it's twisted in a particular way or bent in a particular way, it stays that way. I mean, still viable rope, but it's just not broken in, or it's just the nature of the type of fiber that you're having. And this could be any sort of natural fiber. Now, 3-strand rope, making that is a whole different thing that maybe I'll explore. I know nothing really about it, so it'll be something I'll have to educate myself on. But we're going to work on, in this video, splicing. Now, what I'm going to be using is I'm going to be using duct tape. Because what happens with this type of cordage is it wants to, as soon as you cut it, or it gets cut, it frays, starts to want to undo itself, right? So a good way to deal with that is to take, a piece of tape, masking tape, duct tape, electrical tape, doesn't really matter, but something. And actually, technically, you would want to use, you'd probably want to use some cordage that you can make a strangle knot. I have a video on that. I will post that below on how to make a strangle knot, or some common whipping, either one. And it can be a bit tedious, and you got to have enough cordage. I think you could do this without all of that. It's just going to be a little bit more frustrating and a little bit more time consuming. In a quick and dirty situation, it's best to have you some, like I said, some duct tape, just to make the process shorter. But if you're in a primitive situation, then you'll have to have some finer quarters or at least some extra lashings to make this process easier. Alright, so I'm going to take a length of cordage here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my handy dandy duct tape here, And I'm just going to take a length of it. And what I like to do with that when I'm dealing with cordage is I like to take a length and kind of, yeah, this is the good stuff because it's sticky. I like to wrap it around like so. And then I'll take my cutting tool, knife, stone, scissors, whatever, axe, whatever, and then just cut in half. Alright, so now both ends basically are sealed. They're not going to be frayed anymore. Okay? If this was synthetic cordage, you would use, you know, if it was nylon or plastic or something, you know, you could use a lighter to cinch them so that they stay together. But this is natural cordage, so this duct tape represents common whipping or a strangle knot. All right, just to hold everything in place, or a double overhand knot, just to kind of hold things in place. Strangle knots are much more tighter. Anyhow, this is what we get. So this end is still not going to come undone, and this isn't for this project is not going to come undone. So next, I want to, and again, this is just a demonstration on this particular length of cord. I'm not going to give any real like dimensions per se. I'm just going to say that I have a particular length of cord. It could be 50 feet. It could be, I don't know, it could be 12 inches. It could be 1 foot. But this is just to give you an idea, folded in half. So therefore this is probably two feet length of cordage. English standard, right? So I'm just going to cut this in half just for this demo, right? We'll just say that, you know, the rope snapped, or it got compromised in some way, or we need to make, we have 2 pieces of 50-foot length of triple strand rope, wrapped rope, and we want to combine it to make it 100-foot or approximately 100-foot, right? Because we're going to give up some length. This is how you would do it. Now, the little bit of the time-consuming part now, as you can see, what's going to happen is these are going to want to come undone individually. All right. So what we're going to do first is we're going to go down. I don't know. You know, there's a math quotient to this. I'm not going to get into all that. I think follow your gut. I'm gonna go down. I don't know, what is this? Probably about 5-6 inches, and this is probably actually about 1 foot in length. So I'm gonna go about 5 inches down, 4 inches down, and then I'm gonna take, you know, I'm going to either wrap this with duct tape or some sort of tape, or some sort of stopper wrap. We'll just say stopper wrap because it could be a strangle knot or some tape or whatever. All right, and we're just going to do that. Okay, so now we can totally undo this all the way down to where we've stopped it, so it doesn't undo on its own. The nature of cordage, the nature of rope and string and cordage, it has its own nature. It has its own way of being, to be honest, even though it's an inanimate object. And then let's not get too esoteric, and then especially if it's something that's natural. These are natural fibers too. You harvest, you know, dog bane or yucca or something like that. It's going to have its own energy about it. I won't get too esoteric about it, but cordage has its own way. From a martial arts standpoint, that's why I like flexible weapons a lot. I really, really enjoy flexible weapons. That would be, you know, rope darts. That would be whips. That would be sarongs. So again, I digress, but cordage has its own thing. So you have to put stop gaps into controlling it. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing at approximately the same length on this opposite one. So I'm going to take some cordage here, and what I'm doing is when I wrap it approximately the same length down, is I'm also folding in, because we're going to need to undo this if you're using duct tape. If you're using like a fine cordage to strangle knot it, you can either cut the strangle knot or you can just braid it in, depending on how fine the cordage is. All right, so we basically have about the same thing, and we can kind of unwrap this like so, you know, unravel it like so, and it's gonna stop. All right, so this is the key. This is key. First off, okay, is to have a way of stopping it from unfraying anymore. Okay. Next, we're going to take the individual strands, because as you can see, these are reverse twists with two of them, two strands here, and so we're going to take some more tape or a some sort of wrapping or stopping method to keep it from fraying anymore. Okay, and again, in this case, I'm using duct tape. Electrical tape would work. Yada yada. Okay, I try to express things conceptually, because I think conceptually. So one is not stuck in a particular rut, especially in an emergency. One has to be able to think quickly on one's feet, and be able to replace things that, you know, it's like, oh, we don't have exactly rope. Well, duct tape is actually a pretty good rope. If you fold it and fold and twist it and twist it, it actually is quite strong, and it works pretty well in most cases, or at least as a lashing. So one has to be able to substitute. Bakers and you cooks out there, you know what I'm talking about. You know what to substitute when you're missing an ingredient or you don't have enough of an ingredient. So that's really the concept of what I'm talking about. So I'm just gonna wrap each one of these strands so that they don't unfray while we're doing our splicing, and that's about it. So we want a configuration like this. Ew, on camera here. So we want something like that. Alright, so we have our two ends. We're going to pretend like these are our two ends. And again, like I said, there's memory in this cordage because this is natural fibers, right? And they kind of want to do what they want to do. And you kind of have to let them to a certain degree in order to work with them. But what we want to do is we want to take these and we want to intermesh them, okay? So that they become a viable singular the piece of rope. Okay, you will need a tool like a pen or a sharpened stick. Here I have a 2-edged chopstick that should work just fine, but you will need a tool. Yeah, you'll need a tool. It's easier that way, right? So if I can explain this correctly, what we're going to do is we're going to open up one like a flower, and it's 3 strands like this. Okay, and I like animals, so I'm thinking of this kind of like an octopus, right? And again, I'm not sure how octopus do their thing, but you're gonna do the same thing with the other side, and you want them to mesh. So you want them to kind of go in between each end and kind of meet like this. That's the concept if you cannot see it. Or that's the reason why we have the stopper, because otherwise it won't stop. So we open this up, and we're going to pretend like these are 2 octopi meeting for the first time. I'm not going to elaborate. Try to make this family friendly for the most part, but I think y'all get where I'm going. So they meet for the first time like that. Okay, can you see that? That's what's happening. Okay. Now, on one end, and I'm generally ambidextrous just because of my martial arts training, but I'm right hand dominant. This is born that way. So I'm gonna go from the left side first, and then work the right side. So on my right side, I want to take another piece of duct tape or some rope or something, And I just want to kind of tie these in place. But before I do that, I want to put a little tab in there so it'll be easier to undo everything when it comes time to undo it, because there will come a time to undo it. And as best I can, I just want to wrap everything together so at least they're under control, or at least they're there. You know, maybe I need another piece. And again, I'm off camera, but I can kind of put a tab in there and just kind of keep going so it doesn't, you know, again, if I had cordage here, I could do, you know, a whole, you know, strangle knot or something like that just to tie this in place. But the whole idea is that these three parts here mesh together and we can pull them tight and they're meshed in together. Okay, so once they're meshed in like this, okay, and I'm working on my left side, so everything is looking like this as a configuration, as a point of reference for y'all. All right, so I'm going to be working this way. So at this point, I no longer need this mesh, or excuse me, I no longer need this tie. Okay, this constraint. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find where I did my fold, and now it's easy for me to unwrap it, right? Because duct tape can be a bit, you know, daunting. You know, that's why duct tape is a thing. You know, especially it's really tacky. It's got a lot of glue to it, so that's why it's very popular as a working tool. And then again, you can still mesh it. But now here's where the magic starts to come in, and if I can get a good seat in. All right, so we're gonna deal with this top one here. Okay, now this top one here is overlapping this strand here along this rope, because we're going to start climbing up this rope. This side of the rope, so it's going to overlap this one. It's folding over it. Boom, like that. We want to tuck this underneath this next one, so it's over and then under. Okay, so I can show you better than I can tell you. How about that? So I'm just lift this up. That's why the tool is necessary. And I want to be able to take this and tuck this strand and pull it in there like that. Okay, that's kind of how that works. So now it's over here. Now I can rotate it around, or I'm gonna rotate it towards me actually. So now I have this next strand, this one sticking up. Okay, again, it's over this strand here. We want to tuck it underneath this strand here. So I'm going to lift this up, and hopefully you can see this here, because this is kind of tricky. And I am regurgitating some information. I had to review some information before I was trying to share, because again, I'm just archiving, because you know, you forget. If you don't do it every day, you forget. And there's probably a more concise video that people explain things in different ways, and it's fine. So I'll certainly share that link. But then now we're dealing with this strand. Now, if you can guess, this is over, it's over this strand right here. Where is this going to go next? Where should this stick, or this tool that I'm using, go? If you guessed it, it should be this one. So it's going to be over and under the next one. Okay, this is a very basic splice. There's a more advanced one that I must learn and practice before I share, but this is a basic splice, the one that I know and I'm most familiar with. But of course I had to re-educate myself on, in all transparency. hand might be in the way, but yeah, so there we go. So now that's completing it. We're going to continue to rotate all the way around with each strand, right? So again, this next strand is going to go over this strand here. This strand here is going to go over this strand and under this strand. So I lift this up, and it's just something you got to play with. I mean, you'll get it. It'll start to make sense after a minute. You'll be like, oh, okay. And actually, especially with natural fiber, it'll start to kick in because they'll want to wind on themselves. That's kind of the concept. And then I can rotate this around. This strand has to go over this strand underneath this strand. So I make a way with my tool and then tuck it under. That, right? And then we got one more. We're going to do one more. So we have this one here. This strand goes over this strand, under this strand. Use my tool, and then force it underneath there, like that. Okay, and I could probably do one more. I may, before we go to the other side. But I want to pull these in, and then you can take these and you can kind of rub them together like that to kind of roll them into to themselves. Okay, you know, and I can continue to go and do the whole concept all the way around. All right, so we've finished my left hand side of the splice. All right, and this is a beginner splice. This is an easy splice. Now we're going to go to my right side, so we're going to go this way. All right, concept still the same. I will do one rotation and then I'll finish it off because I don't think I have to explain it once you get it right again. And again, I'll provide the link where I'm getting most of this information from, because maybe that individual explains it in a way that is not as confusing as me. Just to save you some time. So again, I created a tab with the duct tape so it's easy to make the duct tape come off. Okay, and again, I can take my strands, I can just kind of hold them together, make sure everything's tight, everything's meshed in, right? Okay, and now again, remember this is the stopper duct tape piece here that we have here, so we can get rid of that. That's the reason why if you're going to use duct tape or even electrical tape, that's why if you're going to use some sort of tape to put a little tab in it so it's easy to access it and get it off, okay, or release it. All right, and just make sure it's all nice and tight. You can pull everything nice and tight. Okay, and again, this could be a strangle knot or something along those lines. So it comes off quite easy once you get that tab. Don't forget that. Otherwise you'll be struggling. Okay, so now the same thing applies. Still make sure things are tight. All right, and just find a strand. And what's happening here, we're going to use this top strand. There's this strand here. We're going to go over that strand and tuck it underneath this strand. Okay, so the top strand, we're going to make some space, take this one, tuck it underneath. Okay, And the same thing applies. This one, this top strand here, this one here, goes over and underneath this one. So over, under, over, under. That's all. Each turn, each rotation, over, under. Okay. Now this top strand, this strand, I'm gonna go over this strand, underneath this strand. Okay, I'll make some space. Again, a pen will work, sharpen a stick. You know, if you're in a bushcraft situation, works just the same. I happen to have the chopsticks. We eat a lot of Asian food in my household, and so we have a lot of chopsticks. So this is one I've commandeered. She's not gonna like that, but they're relatively cheap. Tuck it through. So you can see how, without the tape or the duct tape, you know, if things want to fray on you, this could be quite difficult, but it's doable. It's just, you just have to be able to work with it and understand how cordage works. So I want to get rid of that because it's in my way. All right, so it ends up being the same process. I'm not going to go through the sole process again, but it goes the same process as we did on my left side, which is now on my right side because I flipped it over. But I'm just going to continue this process, and then I'll show you the end product. Okay, so I've pretty much finished it on this side. I could probably tuck one more in. Let's see, it wants to go over and then go in underneath. This one I'm going to tuck, and it's going over this one. I want to go underneath this one here. You know, to your satisfaction, you know, you know, in a pinch, it really doesn't matter as long as you've done enough so that it actually doesn't slip. If it's too short, it'll slip. Okay, too long, it'll take too much work. too much work, right? So now here we are. We're at the finish for the most part. We can pull each one of the strands, and we can kind of roll this to kind of work these out together, right? And then I'm gonna take this, pull these apart, or try to. It's not going nowhere. Not going anywhere. Not slipping. Okay. And if this was synthetic, you know, I would leave, personally I would leave these in here, the kind of duct tape whipping that we have here. If this was synthetic rope, you could burn them, cut them real tight and then burn them, so you don't have these out. If this kind of rope needed to be worked through a system of some sort, notice how thin this end is, right? Let's say this is the rest of the body of the rope, and this is the splicing area. Obviously it's thicker than this part here, right? So it may not work in that particular situation. Apparently there's a way to work it, your splicing, to where at least it approximates the diameter of the original two pieces that you're working. I'm not very familiar with that yet. This is kind of splicing is what I know, which works in a pinch in a bushcraft situation. And so that's why I'm teaching it. It's fairly easy. I hope it was clear on the video, but again, I'll give you reference below to where you can find the original, so that you can probably have a different perspective, if you will. But anyways, this is how you do a 3-strand splice with some rope, natural fibers.